Hello and good afternoon to you. Welcome to Makers Demo Day. My name is Owen and I'm one of the technical coaches here at Makers. We're here today to showcase the incredible final projects developed by our November 2020 cohort, as well as the final project developed by our first part-time cohort. I'll begin by introducing the November 2020 cohort. Each team will present what they've been working on since Monday last week. Then I'll tell you a little bit about our part-time course and introduce our very first part-time cohort, which will then present their final project. Afterwards, please stick around for a Q&A session with myself, Haley, who's our events manager and a member of the admissions team as well. So let's begin with our November 2020 cohort. Many of you already know Makers is a 16-week coding bootcamp. It's definitely an intensive learning experience, and over the course of their time here, many developers go from knowing some coding basics to being able to build a full-stack application from scratch. We believe that anybody can learn to code. Just a few months ago, the developers you're going to see tonight were enjoying their first week here, getting to grips with test driving and using Ruby classes for the first time. And now they can build and deploy whole projects to create the products that they'd like to use. I've genuinely had a really lovely time working with the November cohort. AJ and Ollie took it in turns, making sure every day started in the best way possible by posting some classic bops from artists like Diana Ross, Shaka Khan, and even the Pussycat Dolls. It definitely kept the energy going through winter, and I'm sure I'm not alone in sending an appreciation your way for the commitment to soundtracking your maker's experience. And I'm also still waiting for a link to a Spotify playlist, so thank you in advance. The whole cohort has made incredible progress over the 16 weeks. Each week, learners are faced with new topics, new challenges, and they have to build up resilience, but also a process to break down those challenges and work through them step by step. And you definitely rose to that challenge together. It was really nice to see your reflections on your final projects this morning. I know that you all set out to learn brand new tech stacks, and it's been really exciting seeing you get to grips with them in just 2 weeks and in very interesting projects as well. I'm really happy for all of you, and I hope you're proud of the achievements you've made in the last few months. Without delaying any further, I'd like to introduce the first team to present this evening, and that is Team RG. I've really enjoyed seeing your project come to life and tried to ignore the guilt that's come with being reminded of all the books I bought during the first lockdown that have been gathering dust on my coffee table. So RG, it's over to you.
Are you bored of all the books in your home? Are your local libraries shut? What if I told you that you can find free books that you're interested in your area? Since the beginning of 2020, many of us have moved towards more traditional pastimes as social outings have been quelled. In the last year, book sales have skyrocketed, but with libraries shut, some people have seen their opportunities for new reading limited. We are Team RG, and today we would like to present to you our new book sharing app, Book Me Up, which can hook you up with your next book. So now I'm going to pass you over to Natasha, who will give you a demo of our product.
Thanks, Cathal. Welcome to the Book Me Up website. This is our homepage where you can browse all of the books that are currently on the community bookshelf. There is more information about the site, including the developers team behind it. To use our website, you need to sign up. You need a username, an email address, a location, which can be as specific as a postcode or as general as a town, and a password. When you click Sign Me Up, you are immediately logged in and taken to the homepage. There's a search bar at the top where you can search by author, title, keyword, anything you like. A search of fantasy shows these 4 books are available, including their locations. For more details, you can see the book title, author, the name of the current user, a link to the location of where they are and where the book is, their email address, an excerpt, and even a link to read some reviews, which will take you to Amazon's reviews for that specific edition. Down here, there is a previously read by section, a library stamp that shows you all of the previous readers of this particular book. If you like it, click on request, and then you will be added to the library card stamp. There we are, Mark in Leeds. Now let's try adding our own book. You can either type in the ISBN number in here, or click on Go On, Scan It. This will load up your webcam, where you take your book, scan the ISBN barcode on the back of your book, and it will detect the barcode and enter it into the field automatically. Click Find My Book, check the details are correct, and finally click Submit. This will put your book onto the community bookshelf for others to find. We worked on making our website dynamic as well, so here is an example of what it would look like on a smaller screen, such as a mobile phone. I will now hand you over to Chris.
Thanks, Natasha, for that wonderful walkthrough of our lovely book sharing app. I'm just going to talk quickly about our team process. For us, we actually put as much importance on how we were going to build our app as what we were going to build. And as such, we started our project with a team charter. And in that team charter, we set an overarching goal, which was that we wanted to build an application that we'll all be confident and proud of. And so that means that we all understand the full code base throughout the whole project, and we could talk confidently to anyone about that. And that informed a lot of our decision-making about how we went about building our app. In terms of planning and scheduling, we used the Trello planning board. In here, we brainstormed all our feature ideas for our application. We did some estimation of how hard each feature or how complicated each feature would be to build. We then used agile processes to schedule those features into 2-day sprints and then allocate each feature to pairs of coders. All our development work was done in pairs, but we reconvened every morning, lunchtime, and evening for a whole team catch-up for planning and for retrospectives. The evening retrospectives in particular, we always ensured that kind of any learnings throughout the day were recorded in a GitHub wiki, and that we shared that with each other so that we all knew what was going on. I'll now hand over to Kiki, who will go into a bit more detail on our learnings.
Thank you, Chris. So I'll be talking about what we learned. Our project developed quite slowly initially, as we were focusing on writing well-tested and clean code. This concerned us to start with, but as we're moving quite slower than other projects, but we learned that this led to a sturdy base, which allowed easier development for future features. Easier, definitely not easy development. As Chris mentioned, we agreed it was important for each member to understand all parts of our project. With this in mind, we decided to rotate pairs every half a day. This way, one pair would be the teacher, as they would have the knowledge from the previous rotation, and the others would be there to learn and bring in new knowledge. Almost every part of the project was new to us, as we were dealing with an entirely new tech stack, MERN. We spent a lot of our time researching, but we got there in the end and have finished the project with improved research skills, along with all our coding related learnings. Now over to Will for the challenges.
Thanks, Kiki. In terms of challenges, we often found that our task estimations were back to front. The easy tasks took far longer than we expected, which sometimes demoralized the team. Conversely, we found that the tasks we thought would take longer actually were comparatively a quicker process. This had the effect of invigorating the team. On one particular afternoon, 2 pairs went to fix the same problem. However, there were upsides to this, as it allowed us to break tasks down and helped our estimations. We also resolved to communicate if we branched off from our tasks to avoid this in future. We were anxious that we wouldn't end up with a flashy app. However, our main aim was our deeper learning, and we also managed to get our favorite features done in the end. The layout of our project with back end and front end did lead to, in the same repo, did lead to making it difficult to deploy. Over to Armin for our successes.
Thanks, Will. So yeah, our successes. We as a group felt that sticking to our consistent process throughout the project was something we were really proud of. We didn't fall to the pressure of getting features done and kept following a good coding standard. Almost all the project was test driven, as you can see from the abundance of green in our test coverage image. And my favorite part of testing was using Cypress, which automatically ran a test. As you can see in the GIF, it is signing in on its own. It was such a cool feature and it never got old to watch. Thank you for watching Argy Bargy's demo.
Thank you so much. Well done. Well done on a really lovely project. And thank you for your presentation. So next up, I'd like to introduce Looking Glass. Looking Glass, they're solving a very real lockdown problem. So your project idea was very much appreciated by me personally. and I'll hand over to you now.
Hello, everyone. So we are the creators of Looking Glass. Our team consists of myself, Ollie, Suji, Irina, Ian, and Sarah. So a couple of weeks ago, we came together to solve a problem, one that potentially has become a bit more prevalent in the past year, where we may find ourselves with a bit more downtime, hopelessly roaming through Netflix and IMDb, unable to kind of decide on something to watch. And so you might try and think back to that film that your friend told you about, but unfortunately you can't remember it by the time you get to your next movie night. So Looking Glass allows users to share their top film recommendations with their friends, letting them see what they've watched and loved, as well as what they're planning to check out in the future. With the help of their friends' recommendation, our platform allows users to curate a watch list for the next time they sit down in front of their TV. So without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Ollie, who's going to take you through the tech stack behind Looking Glass.
Hiya, thank you, Chris. So we used a Ruby on Rails backend with a largely React front end. We split it slightly for some things like the user sign up, login, log out journey. Those things are mostly just Rails views, but the rest is all in React. So our React components make calls of two different APIs. One is an external API, which is an API created by TMDB, which is the movie database, which is kind of an IMDb clone, lots of great information about different movies, posters, release dates, casters and cast directors, all that sort of thing. When a user wants to add a new movie to either their recommendations list or to their wish lists, React trawls that API, pulls down all the information, pops it into the local database using Rails. They're also presented as an option to the user so they can select which one they want, and that's the one that gets passed in correctly. The React components all update live as these changes happen. I'll pass you now on to Irina.
Thank you, Ollie. Hello, everyone. So we've created a wiki page to help us with the team's organization. We meet daily at 10 a.m. when we discuss what to work on and do amazing merges and split into pairs. The pairs were either groups of 2 and 3, depending on the task, and mobbing as necessary. We've used the Trello board to assign the workload and have a clear image of the project's progress. Retros were decided on the day, and then we discussed what went well, how could we improve as a group, and each pair would showcase the features they've worked on. We've also appointed a daily leader with devolved powers. I'll pass you on to Sarah.
Cool, thanks, Irene. So I'm just going to talk about the biggest challenge we had, which was that halfway through our project, we realized we were going to have to scale our idea back a bit. We initially wanted a sort of messaging feature on the app, and then we remodeled that because we realized we wouldn't have enough time to implement that well. And so that became a sort of button function where you could add things from a user's recommendations list into your wish list. Our biggest learning was probably that it's okay to start slow. We maybe were too keen to get coding really fast, and actually if we had planned a bit more at the beginning, we would have sort of maybe estimated that better. But also it's really hard to know how long things are going to take. And that's, also, it was unpredictable. I'll pass you on to Suji, who's going to talk about our goals and achievements.
Everyone, thank you, Sarah. So we combined some old and new tech. So Ruby on Rails was something we're familiar with, and React we were not so familiar with. So I think we did a pretty good job as a team managing to combine both tech stacks to work together. We're also happy that we created a product that we can work on further to improve in the future. And I'm very happy to pass you on to Ian now, who's going to show us a quick demo.
Thank you, Suji. So here we go. Signing up with your standard email, username, 6-character password minimum, and signing up. There we go. So as you can see, there's a create new recommendations. What will happen here, you type in the name of the film and it searches the database You click on it and it comes up with a load of information about it, like date, picture, description. And then you can write at the bottom a comment about why you recommend a film, that kind of thing. So click new recommendation, close, and there it is with the information. So same thing with new wish list. It's obviously this is for films you want to watch, trawls the database and comes up with the information about the film and allows you to include a comment about why you want to watch the film. And again, same process, close it, go to my profile, and there it is. So next thing, I'm going to log out and we're going to sign in with an account that already has lots of films on it. So as you can see here, it's got a lot of recommendations, a lot of wish lists. You can see the information if you click expand, as you can see there. Okay, so friends, we're going to view one of our friends' accounts. So Irina, again, she has a load of recommendations, a load of wish lists. And yeah, you can expand and see the information. But you can also add to a wish list. So that's adding Irina's recommendations to your own wish list. And it tells you added from Irina's recommendations, which is a very cool feature. Now we're going to add Garth as a friend. You can't actually view his account until Garth accepts the friend request, which is what's going to happen now. So just wait for that to happen. There we go. So he will be accepted. You can decline if you want, but we won't do that. And as you can see, similar thing, expanding, you get to see the information about the film again, and again, add to wish list. And there you see Back to the Future is now on Garth's own wish list. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. There's a nice picture of us.
Lovely, thank you so much, Looking Glass. And next up, we have our team Ride the Ducks, a really wonderful project that I feel is looking towards some brighter times. So over to you, Ride the Ducks.
Hello everyone, I'm happy to present Ride the Duck, the all-in-one app. We came up with this name because of the Black Rover from Makers and the idea of traveling, so we say Ride the Duck. The team comprised 4 developers, Ara, Ben, Luke, and me, Javi. Ride the Duck was created to solve a problem that we all, at some point in our life, faced, to find all the travel information you need in one place and stop looping on so many places.
So because we were designing an app, which we hadn't done before, we utilized an application called Wireframe, which is a blueprints tool which allows us to essentially construct a temporary website, temporary app design. So we knew what sort of applications we wanted to present. So on the left-hand side, we have our MVP, which showed us the minimum functions that we wanted to add, such as the top 10 places and weather, and also a currency converter. And on the right, we have our full product app that shows all of the restaurants, flights, hotels that we wanted to show fully with our finished application. Next slide. So for our tech stack, we decided to use native React for our application, which works with both iOS and Android. We use native React for the front end and JavaScript for the back end. And we had done just a little bit of React, but not much. So when it came to native React, we had a little bit of adjustment with some of the syntax. Firebase we used as our database backend. Exos we used to get the APIs off of our off where we wanted them and onto our application. And JSON we used for testing purposes. Next slide. So we designed, so we wanted a color palette that would work throughout our whole app, so it stayed consistent. So we based it on our own duck. So we based it on a duck, the mallard, which would just run with our logo. Next slide. And so as you would expect with a travel app, we used a lot of APIs to gather information. So we had 7 in total, and all of these were chosen because they had open source information that updated regularly. So with our open weather app, it showed us not just the weather, but where specifically where it was coming from and what conditions there would be. And especially for somewhere like here with that API, we could see where the locations and map was where someone typed in the location. Next slide.
I want to briefly talk about the challenges we faced along our journey. First of all, we are a small group of 4 members, but we had a grand vision of creating all-in-one travel app, which we didn't want to compromise. So as a team, we really tried to stick together and stay agile so we can build our app quickly. Secondly, all the tech stack we used for our app was completely new to us. None of us had an experience of creating a mobile app with React Native or with creating database with Firebase, so there was a very steep learning curve. Lastly, we had to implement multiple APIs to get the various data points, which required us to research what's out there in terms of API. And because each API is different, we had to learn how to use them one by one. So in the next slide, I want to show you visually the different stages of our app. In this slide, from left to right, you can see the evolution of our app with adding new APIs. As you can see, we started with a basic search box. Then we added the Yelp API to get the list of restaurants and landmarks in each city. You can see that our app is starting to take shape in this slide. We added design features and we decided to add flight information. And lastly, the user sign up and log in by using Firebase. In the next slide, as a summary, we managed to work through these challenges and achieve what we have. And now I'm very excited to hand over to Luke, who will finally present our app.
Thanks, Aura. So I'll just load through the page. Okay, so our app, we start off, we have made a bouncing duck loading page, and there is the login page and the create account page, both made with Firebase. So I'm just going to preload some user information into that and log in. So it's currently preset to London. So when you log in, you can see the flag, the place name, the country name, the language spoken, the region, the currency. It's depicted on a map. It also shows weather and temperature information and information about travel guidance. There is also a currency converter. So when you add a new amount into there, it will give you the GBP currency converted rate. Next are the restaurants, the hotels and the landmarks. So it shows the top 10 currently on Yelp. And when you click on more info, it will take you to the Yelp page, which will allow you to view things such as reviews. And then when you click on directions, it will ask you for your current location. And if you click on navigate in the top right corner, it will give you directions to the location. And you can also click the call button and it will call the location. At the bottom, we've also included a little duck that when you click it, it goes quack for no real reason, just because. Next, we're going to show you the about page. So that currently shows the developer information. So when you click on one of the buttons of the developers, like we're going to click on ours, it will take you to her GitHub profile. There is also an email address which you can contact us on. And if you click on check behind the scenes, it will take you to the organization we created on GitHub for the project. So now we're going to input a new destination. We're going to choose Paris, and all the information on the page is going to dynamically update. So as you can see, all the information is now changed, and also the currency converter, the FX is now set to European, and it will give you the current FX rate for that. All of the locations have now changed to reflect Paris. And when you scroll to the bottom, you can click check flights, and it will show you the cheapest flights to that location. And when you click on select, it will take you through to Kiwi and show you more information about the flight and allow you to book directly from there. One of the cool things we managed to figure out was that Rome is currently in Italy, but it also has the Vatican as well. So when we type in Rome, we managed to get it to display both sets of information, one for the Vatican and one for Italy. And you wouldn't think there's much of a difference, but apparently it's not safe to travel to the Vatican, but it's fine to travel to Rome. And that is our app. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ride the Duck, singular. I apologize for insinuating there were multiple ducks. It's just the one. Well done on a really lovely project. And last, but definitely not least, from our November cohort, I'm excited to introduce Team Recipe, fusing some really interesting project categories together. So I'll hand over to you now.
Hello, we are Team Recipe, and we decided that we, in our final project, set ourselves some goals before we actually decided what we were going to make. And those goals were that we were going to try and challenge ourselves with learning new technology that we hadn't encountered yet, whilst also consolidating what we did know from JavaScript. And we decided that we were going to use the MERN stack, and we wanted to involve web scraping with that. So having decided those things, we then looked for inspiration on what to create. And we were all foodies and into music, so we decided that we wanted to get some recipe inspiration whilst listening to music, and be able to filter through different recipes from BBC Good Food whilst integrating your own Spotify account into your search as well. I'm going to hand you over to Simon, who will run you through a demo of our product.
Thanks, AJ. Yeah, so if I log in as a previously registered user, and then log in there, and perhaps I decide I want to listen to some music while I'm picking out a recipe. So this takes you through using a Spotify API, because I've got an account with Spotify, I can input my details, and then with successful login, that then grants an access token. So perhaps I'm inspired to cook something Italian, so I can start an Italian themed playlist. And then, as you can see with the functionality that we implemented, we've got infinite scroll there. So it's grabbing all the different relevant recipes back from the database. Perhaps I then click on the pizza, but maybe don't have all the relevant ingredients for that at that point in time. So favorite that, and maybe dig out a few other ingredients in the cupboard and decide to go for something more Latin American themed. So I can select the different filters, which will then re-render all the relevant recipes back from the database, which then allows me to pick out my recipe for the evening. I'll hand over to Lisa, who I think is going to talk us through the kind of the roadmap of the project.
Yeah, I'm going to walk through our feature development. So since we wanted to add a lot of features to our website, we had to prioritize our task and implement features step by step. So we start setting up the MERN stack. This was quite an interesting challenge because we had to deal with a new tech and learn how to query no relational database. This was the first time for all of us doing that. So after that, we wanted our website to display a lot of recipe. All the recipe are from the BBC Good Food website. And we thought that the best solution was to rely on a web scraper to grab all the data from the BBC website. And after that, so after grabbing all the recipe from the BBC website, we were able to pull more than 5K recipes. And since we were able to grab all these data, we need to find a way to display these recipe on our website. We first implemented a pagination solution as let's say our first iteration, but then to improve the user experience, we decided to go for an infinite scrolling solution. After implementing that, we add a filter, a recipe filter, to show only those recipes that contain the ingredients selected by the user. And after doing that, we focus on the login functionality in order to implement all the features that require that. An example of these is the add to favorite that has been added to our website. And At the end, we decided to add few Spotify playlists to our website to allow the user to cook and at the same time listening to music. So these are all the features implemented in these past 2 weeks, and I'm going to pass over Will now.
So one of the early priorities for the project was for us to get access to a large number of recipes to populate the website. We thought about using a third-party API to do this, but eventually decided to go and build our own web scraper because we thought it would be a more interesting learning experience. So there are 4 steps to this. The first was to find a page or set of pages on BBC Good Food that had all of the recipes on. We got this by just searching for nothing in the search bar on the website, and a page like the left came back on. There were about 417 search result pages containing all of the recipes. We then used a program called Puppeteer, which is an automated web browser. And we were able to program that to essentially navigate all of these web pages and extract all of the recipe URLs. So there are a couple of loops to do this. There was an outer loop that would basically visit every single one of these search result pages. And then a loop within that for each of these pages would scan the page and bring out all of the recipe URLs. So essentially after that, we ended up with a massive array containing about 10,000 recipe URLs. And then the third part of the recipe scraper was to go into each of these recipe URLs and get all of the information. We found a third-party package to do this. We went into it and made a few changes just to make sure it was giving us the data back the way we wanted. But that basically iterated over the 10,000 recipes, took out the ingredients, image, method, etc. And then the final step was just to insert all of this into our cloud-based MongoDB database, which could then be accessed by our Recipe app. I'm going to pass you over to Zine, who's going to talk about infinite scroll.
Thanks, Will. The challenges of filtering were having to send the selected ingredients to filter by to the database and query the database with the selected ingredients. Once the recipes have been found, we would send it all to the web page. Doing this, we also stumbled across another problem. As our database contains over 5,000 recipes, rendering all 5,000 recipes on the page would cause our web page to crash. To prevent this, we had to implement pagination. What this means is only send a limited amount of recipes per page, and when you click on the next page, it would send the next set of recipes. Clicking next page seemed too old school for us, so we decided to implement infinite scrolling. To do this, we had to let the browser know when the last recipe was visible on the screen and to then automatically send a request to the next page of the set recipes to be rendered. I will pass you over to AJ, who will talk about our goals.
Yeah, so we started with working out how we were going to work best as a team, and we all acknowledged that having morning, lunchtime, and evening sort of sit downs to kind of consolidate what we had learned and what we had implemented those days would be a really useful way of consolidating that learning. And the second one was to prioritize tasks. So that was a case of choosing which features we thought were our MVP and then working towards those. And yeah, I think we worked pretty well as a team and came up with a very cool product. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Recipe. Thank you for building a project that will hopefully inspire me to stop making the same thing 4 times a week, which is very much needed after many months of cooking for myself. And well done on your project. Well done to all of our project teams from the November 2020 cohort. I'm really happy for you and all that you've achieved over the last 4 months. You should be super proud of yourselves. It was genuinely a pleasure to work with you over your time with Makers so far, and I'm excited to see where you go next. Take it easy this weekend, rest up. You have a lot to be proud of, so make sure you take some time to celebrate and rest and relax before the next phase. Cool. So to pick up where we left off, I'll just tell you a little bit more about the part-time course. Might be repeating myself, sorry about that. But just to kind of paint a full picture here. So Over the course of the 28-week part-time course, we cover everything we cover in our full-time course. So this includes building programming fluency, getting into test-driven developments and architecture, back and front-end web development, and a big helping of teamwork using agile practices. So this culminates in what is a 4-week final project rather than 2 on the topic and in the stack they chose as a team. So we developed this course to open up makers to more people with differing work and family commitments. And of course, we're happy to answer more questions about this in the Q&A at the end. So I want to hand over now to our first part-time cohort's final project team for their presentation. This cohort started in July, and then this is the culmination of their journey over the last 4 weeks in this final project. They would like to be introduced as the part-time peeps. So I'm going to hand over to you now.
Good evening, everyone. Well done to the other cohorts for their amazing projects. We are the part-time peeps, or Amit, Anastasis, Ellen, and myself. We are the July 2020 cohort. For our final project, we have created a pandemic theme game called Vaccine versus Virus. Maybe not a very inspired name, but it is descriptive. It's a snake versus block type of game where the snake is a syringe and the blocks are viruses which need to be destroyed or avoided depending on the type of virus it encounters. Initially, we had a lot of ideas about how our game should behave. There were different features in the plan, but due to lack of time, we had to settle on a simpler version, which you will see in the demo. Our goals as a team were to create something different than our previous projects, which were mostly web applications. And we thought it would be interesting to create a game. We've used JavaScript before during the course, and we wanted to consolidate our learnings while still using practices like TDD and object-oriented programming. Last but not least, we wanted to have fun in the process and learn as much as we can. My colleague Anastasis is going to go through the tech stack now. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. My name is Anastasis. Our game was built with JavaScript and we used Jest as our test framework. For continuous integration and deployment, while we were working on them, we used GitHub Actions. Everything was uploaded on the cloud platform of Heroku for all you to enjoy our game. And it comes with our backend server, which we use Sinatra to see now. Now, please enjoy a short demo for the game, which Helen will say a few words on our journey.
Versus block. We thought we would do a pandemic-inspired game, so it's quite a fun novelty game called Vaccine versus Virus. And as you'd imagine, we're going to be the vaccine trying to take on the virus. This is our index page where the user can go ahead and start the game, which is what I'm going to do now. So I click on the Start Game button, and I'm in control of this syringe, which can hit these white viruses, and when I do this, my score goes up. And as you can see, I'm avoiding these green deadly viruses, because if I hit them, they're going to end the game. So I'll keep continuing to use the syringe to get these white viruses, and if I unfortunately manage to mess up and hit the green deadly virus, the game's over. And quite nice features, you get how many viruses you've destroyed, and then if you had as much fun as I just did, you can actually go ahead and keep playing. So it's quite nice that it's just going to be a loop. So I can go ahead and click the play again button and continue to just attack these white viruses. So I hope you all have a go at playing and that you enjoyed the demo. Thanks.
Thanks for that demo, Amit. So my name's Ellen. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got there, putting the part-time into the part-time peeps. So as it's been mentioned, we were the part-time cohort, and that meant effectively that our day looked a little bit like this. Do some work, code in the evening, go to sleep, and repeat it again the next day. And by the time we came to do our project, we'd been doing this for nearly 6 months. So you can imagine that had got a bit relentless. And one of the things that was really important to us was to make sure that we were looking after our well-being and using our time and energy really well during the project. To do this, we had kind of 3 main techniques. Every day at the start of the session, we had a stand-up, which was part of planning the work for the day. But part of this, we incorporated a mood check-in, and that was simply communicating with each other about our energy levels and how we were feeling. And that meant that when we then paired off to do the coding for the evening, we knew a little bit about where each other were at. We could make allowances if people had had long and busy days at work, and generally make sure we were taking the breaks that we needed and looking after ourselves. We also needed to manage our time realistically. So we focused on getting to a very basic MVP first and taking small steps forward from that. And also when it came to our agile rituals, like our stand-ups and our retros, we needed to keep them on point so that they weren't eating into our coding time. Another challenge we faced was around sharing knowledge. As Amy mentioned, none of us had built a game before, and parts of our tech stack described by Anastasis were also new territory. In particular, none of us had worked with HTML Canvas before, which is the tech that actually displays the game on the screen. So to handle this challenge, we used 2 main techniques. One was to change pairs every session. For us, that effectively meant we were changing pairs every 2 to 3 hours. And we did this so that if one pair had been working on something for an evening, the next evening, half of that pair would stay working on related content, but bring a new member of the team up to speed as their new pair partner. They could then cycle off that topic onto something new. So we kept refreshing what we were working on whilst kind of providing that continuation of knowledge. And the other technique we used was when code was ready to be sort of merged into our main code base, we reviewed that as a mob and used it as a chance for those who'd written the code to explain it to those who had not been as involved, and for people to ask questions and really get an understanding of what the code was about. And now I'll pass you over to Amit to talk about some of the particular challenges we faced in building a game.
I'm going to talk about test-driven game development. So I'd say this is probably the biggest challenge with making a game in programming, is that I think the coding aspect you can really drive through, but having to test drive it is something that's not too often done. But our aim was to use the principles that we'd gained at Makers Academy and to focus on good test-driven development. And we were able to do this by testing for the output of our methods, testing the state of our components and objects, and then testing the interaction between our objects. And there are many benefits to this, and just to highlight a few is that you have good object-oriented design, and with that, that means your code base is very extendable, very readable, and it also means that when you want to refactor, say you want to improve your code, you can go ahead and do that without being worried that your code's going to not work, because you've always got those tests as a safety test. And yeah, so it was good practice. So yeah, thank you all for listening. And our app is actually live on Heroku at that website.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our very first part-time cohort, and congratulations on everything you've achieved over the last couple of months. I hope you're very proud of yourselves. And thank you to all of our final project teams this evening. I'm going to hand back over to Haley now for our Q&A. So please do stick around if you have questions for us about Makers. And thank you to all of the learners, and I hope you have really lovely weekends.
Cool, thanks so much, Owen. And yeah, well done to our first ever part-time cohort. Looks like a really great project. Cool, so we're going to pick back up with the questions. Thanks to everyone for submitting them in the Q&A function at the bottom. I'm also joined by Rachel, who's one of our course managers, and she'll be able to take some of your questions around the admissions process, what we look for, all that kind of thing. So yeah, we can just dive straight into the questions. So the next one is asking, what languages and technologies do you use throughout the course? Owen, would you be able to help with that one, please?
Hi, yeah, great question. So we kick off with Ruby. So this is to kind of build up some programming fluency. Ruby is a really nice language to kind of get started with. I felt cheated that I only found out about it multiple years into programming because I thought it would have been a lot nicer way to start, but sorry, I'm a big fan of Ruby. So yeah, learners get comfortable with programming fundamentals with this, and they're also introduced to the web and databases working with Ruby frameworks, Sinatra and Postgres. So we make a start with that. The 6th week of the bootcamp is entitled Learning a New Language. So you start learning JavaScript with an angle of taking what you already know, programming so far, and thinking about what can you translate into something else? So what will translate directly and what are you going to have to pick up brand new? Like what are the kind of individual quirks to a new language? So we encourage learners to think about how they're picking up that second language. So by the time it gets to the final projects, they hopefully feel more confident picking up a brand new language or tech stack. So then when it comes to final projects, learners can decide to kind of pick something up. Like learners are often quite keen to work with React, so they might develop something with the MERN stack. They might pick up iOS development with Swift or React Native, or occasionally like a machine learning project with Python, things like that. So we want to get you to the point where you feel just quite excited that if there's something you want to learn or something you want to build, that you feel confident that you can tackle that basically and break it down and find somewhere to make a start with it. Circling back to Ruby, learners spend 2 weeks getting to grips with Ruby on Rails to build a full stack web app while getting to grips with Rails entirely from scratch in a team project. And those are the kind of main things that we touch on then. So it frees up a little bit towards the end for your team to choose what you want to work on. But it's, yeah, Ruby and then JavaScript up until that point.
Cool, thanks, Owen. And that kind of ties into one of the questions that's a little bit further down, asking about the kind of choice that students get. So hopefully, hopefully through the range of projects you've seen today as well, you can see there is that sort of like flexibility in what you do kind of towards the end half of the course after you've got those like fundamentals really nailed down. Cool. So where are we? It was Ruby's 28th birthday this week. Excellent. I'm going to move on to the next one. Are there any apprenticeship opportunities coming up? I believe we've got a couple. Rachel, do you know which opportunities are live at the moment?
Yeah, it's just one actually through a company called Elsevier. So yeah, if you're interested, yeah, having a look on, yeah, just Googling Elsevier apprenticeships, and there are a couple of opportunities I think coming up this year.
Awesome, thank you. And would you be able to share a little bit just about like how it works with the apprenticeship side? Because sometimes kind of people don't know where to go, like if there's not an opportunity open at the moment.
Yeah, so I guess in general, makers like applications for apprenticeships are closed, but there are a couple of, or there is a company sort of doing external attraction. So if you go onto the website, you can register your interest. So when things do become available, from a maker's point of view, we'll email you. So definitely go to the apprenticeship page on the website and put your email address in. And then if we have like the general applications open up, we'll message you. But otherwise, yeah, just I guess keeping an eye out on the newsletter. We always put any opportunities in the weekly newsletter that gets emailed out. So I would sign up for that. Is probably the best way to get in touch and find out.
Awesome, thank you. So the next question is asking, is there a preference for students using Windows or Mac OS for their projects and learning? So we do give out Macs if you do need to borrow one. Owen, is there could you explain the reason why we use that instead of Windows?
Yeah, our curriculum is built for programmers that are using MacBooks. I won't say not to use Windows, but I think that if you would like to use an operating system that is not just a MacBook with OS, that there will be some things that will require you to do a little bit more independent research and debugging to kind of get equivalent things running on your machine. So if you're comfortable navigating your operating system, then that's absolutely fine.
Cool, thank you. So next question is asking, are there any scholarships or financial help available now or in the future for the part-time or full-time course for someone who's not an ethnic minority, LGBTQ, etc.? Yeah, so we're always open to kind of looking for new partnerships. Sorry, I'm talking in terms of like the scholarship side. So you might have perhaps seen our represent page, which is where this question I'm assuming is come from. So for those of you who don't know, we're just starting a scholarship with Code Bar and Coding Black Females. If you are part of a group that supports a different group that you'd like to work with, there's a that you might like us to work with. There's a section at the bottom of that page where you can submit your group's details, and we'll get in touch about seeing if there's a partnership opportunity, because yeah, it's something that we're always looking for. In terms of financial help, we currently work with CourseBud, and it's basically like it's kind of like a compare the market sort of vibe for coding boot camps, and they don't, I'm not sure if they offer like a direct like loan option, but they can kind of aggregate which options are out there on the market, so they'll be able to kind of better advise you than we can on the financial side. Okay, so Luke is asking how much of the course is dedicated to soft skills and learning support tools like GitHub, Trello, etc. Oh, it's another one for you.
That's fine. Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking about this question when I saw it, because I think I started to think of like specific places it is. So for example, learning supporting tools like GitHub is featured in the pre-course, and you'll basically start to learn things like the command line and using Git and stuff like that. But I think that really these things just permeate through the entire course. So maybe a bit of an introduction to command line and Git in the pre-course before you join the full-time course. And then you just get a lot of practice in them in everything that you do. So for example, you pair with another learner every single afternoon, and you'll have to push your code for your pair partner to pull that down and continue working on it. So you need to get comfortable tackling those things to be able to write the code. We did 3 different team projects over the 12 weeks, so you get a lot of practice in working in a developer team. So that includes like Git and creating, breaking down and sharing tickets. You mentioned Trello and all these things like that. So yeah, I think it kind of permeates everything in the bootcamp. And I think the best way to kind of learn these kinds of things like GitHub specifically is just by letting things go wrong and then trying to fix it from there. So yeah, it's definitely learning by doing with a lot of these things.
Yeah, and I would just add to that we also teach a whole kind of emotional intelligence curriculum alongside the bootcamp. So that's led by our coach Dana, who she'll run workshops on like getting to know your kind of like what's your work style, like how do you work better with other people, and that's a really fundamental part of the course. It's not an add-on, it's really about like helping you improve. And so when you're kind of going straight into tech teams, you've got those skills. So those workshops are also kind of integrated throughout the bootcamp, and I think it's like based on kind of student feedback before, like it's one of the areas that people find really, really valuable. So yeah, that's a whole kind of additional part that you'll be learning about when you're with us as well. Okay, I've not read the top question, so I'm going to come back to it in a second. So next question is asking how big are cohorts and what's the typical day like? Rachel, is it still around 25?
Yeah. Yes, I would say 20 to 25 would be like your average cohort.
Cool. And Owen, would you be able to give a breakdown of a typical day? I know it kind of changes like halfway through the course as well.
Yeah, I'm just the typical day. I was just spiraling, thinking like, how do I try to summarize a day? But I'll try to maybe share a little bit about different kind of typical days, because there's maybe like 2 different types of typical day makers. So I guess when you join the full-time course, the first 4 weeks, I guess, are pretty standard. So you will have kind of the morning section and then the afternoon section. So as I mentioned before, the afternoon section is basically you and another pair partner. It will change every day, working on an afternoon challenge that you have to kind of break down and tackle together as a pair. And in the morning, it's more independent work. It's workshops with coaches, or it could just be independent learning time for yourself. So you might start your day at 9:30 with a peer group check-in. That's when you meet with a group of learners in your cohort. Could be like 4 or 5 of you. You just check in, see how everybody's getting on, just chat about what you're working on, or if you're kind of blocked or stuck on anything, and give each other advice. If you have a workshop, that will probably kick off at 10, which can last maybe between an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's when a coach will kind of pick one of the core concepts from the week, do a bit of demonstration and give you a chance to work on it with somebody else, and with support. Then you come back together with the coach for a plenary session, just to kind of wrap up, to a bit of a Q&A. And then the rest of the morning is yours then to start working on whatever you feel like you need to target to work towards those weekly learning objectives, which we outline for you. Then around lunchtime, there's meditation at 1:30. Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's yoga in the afternoons. And those are the kind of that's maybe kind of a typical enough day. Towards Friday afternoon, you'll have a retro with your coach, and that's basically thinking about, from everything that I learned this week, what best enabled my learning, or maybe what would I change to make sure that I feel like I can improve on my learning next week. So that could be, I'm going to reach out to others more, I'm going to ask more questions, I'm going to check in to have a chat with the coach to just see how I'm doing, things like that. And I think, yeah, that's fairly standard. There's probably a better explanation of it on our website with a bit of a breakdown. I think the second typical kind of week I was thinking of then, because 5 weeks of the full-time course are dedicated to team projects. So each of them kind of vary quite a lot in scope to the final project, which you'll scope basically the whole thing with your team for. But in a team project, you'll be kind of deciding your own routine. So what agile practices are you going to follow? Which meetings are you going to have? How are you going to break down these tickets? How are you going to split this work up between pairs? So I think the first couple of weeks are building you towards a place of independence and self-organizing. Those are maybe 2 kinds of weeks that you might have in the bootcamp. I hope that gives some context to your question.
No, that wasn't enough. I mean, actually keep going. No, I'm joking. I think that was that's a really kind of balanced view of how it works at Makers. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. So the next one is asking for apprenticeships after you've been on your apprenticeship for a year and you're applying for your next role. Would you have been considered that you've been a junior developer for the past year, or would you kind of have been considered as an apprentice for the previous year? I'm actually, in all honesty, not sure of how it works, because I think it's slightly different with different hiring partners. Also, at the end of the your first year on the apprenticeship, hopefully the idea is that you'll stay on with the same company. Rachel, is there anything different that you know about that? Otherwise, it might be good to just drop me your email, whoever asked the question, and I'll see if I can find a better answer for you.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure. I don't work directly on the apprenticeship sort of side, but I would say, yeah, you're working towards, I guess, your level 4 apprenticeship. And once you've completed sort of your exams, you're going to have gained that qualification. So I guess that's what you'll be putting on your CV, that you've sort of actively gained that qualification. But yeah, I'm sure we can ask Christina or some of the coaches that work on apprenticeships what the answer might be for that one.
Yeah, if you'd like us to kind of send you a more conclusive answer, if you drop us a message to contact@makers.tech and just CC Hayley, I should be able to point you in the right direction to get a better idea of that for you. Cool. So the next question is asking, what makes a person's application stand out? Rachel.
Definitely you have chance in your motivation letter to stand out, I think. So spending a bit of time, not hours and hours, but writing just a couple of paragraphs on yourself. Are there any sort of projects that you've done or online courses that you've tried. That's all really great for us to sort of hear about. Tell us if you've come along to an event, like what did you like about the event, and sort of what drew you to Makers. So yeah, I guess do your research, read our blog. It's got some amazing content and people's stories that you can read through. But yeah, really just tell us what you've been up to. Like, even if you haven't coded before, like we still want to see your application. Like it doesn't mean that it's a bad application. If you haven't coded before, tell us like why you're interested in getting into coding. I think that would be a good place to start for people that haven't coded before.
Cool, thank you, Rachel. Awesome. So the next question from Naz is asking, are we bringing the job guarantee back soon? So some of you might be aware that we used to offer a job offer guarantee, which was basically if you couldn't find a job within 6 months from graduating from the course, then we would refund the course back to you. We stopped doing that at the start of coronavirus, obviously, because that's not something that we could have guaranteed at all. At the moment, there's no plan to bring it back, but I think everything to do with kind of the like changes that we've made during kind of COVID and this whole kind of last year period, all of those kind of like little elements of things that are to be reviewed at some point. So I guess we have a kind of like ongoing blog post that has like updates on any sort of changes that we've made like because of coronavirus. So it's likely that if something is updated, it'll be posted there, or an announcement in the newsletter. So no in the short term, but it's not like not a never, basically. In addition to that as well, job hunting support like has changed a lot, like since we've taken away the job guarantee. So we've added a whole load of extra support to the job hunting side of things. You know, obviously to support students now that it has been a little bit tougher. Students are assigned a coach if they get offered a job interview to help kind of prep them and all that kind of thing. So hopefully it's not, you know, just something's been taken away. Like we've really tried to kind of like add in extra value there where we can. Cool. So this next question links to it actually. What's Maker's thoughts on when to go back on site? Will it be later this year? Again, it's kind of pending pending announcements, even though there's been the government announcement recently. In general, we've kind of been erring on the side of caution. Obviously, normally we've got lots and lots of people in our office. So we currently don't have any like set dates to go back on site, and all of the cohorts that we have live now, they will all be completely remote from start to finish. It won't change like halfway through studying or anything like that. Cool. So the next question from excuse me, from Leslie is asking, how are students grouped together and what's the process for coming up with the team's projects?
Great question. So your first team project is just randomly generated. I will just kind of put all of your names down the list, shuffle things around a little bit and post them, and then that's it. For the second team project, basically the same, but I switch you around so that you get a chance to work with more different people in your cohort, so that you're not working with the same people too many times. And then for your final projects, which I think was the second part of your question, that's always fun. So we do a final project ideation session in which we encourage you to just spend some time thinking about solo project ideas for yourself. So it could be a whole project that you're thinking about, or it could be like a feature of something that you don't think maybe it could be its entire own project. And then everybody takes time to kind of generate those ideas by themselves and then put them all up on a virtual board. We use Miro for that, which I quite like. And then you will kind of list your own project ideas in your order of preference, submit your top 2 to a bigger board with the whole cohort, and then we try to group them together by category, which is always interesting because the ideas are always so like wide ranging. But then basically we'll try to whittle that down. So there's a number of categories. Everybody submits their preferences for their final team project. So project categories could be something like food or recipes, could be travel, it could be machine learning, stuff like that. It really varies every time, but you'll kind of submit some preferences. If there's a particular tech stack you'd like to work with, something like that, you can include that in the form, and then your final project coach will do whatever they can to make sure everybody's as happy as possible with the teams that they get. And then when you come together with your team then on the Monday, so this would have been Monday last week for this cohort, with people that kind of chose a similar category of project. So by then you will have been kind of simmering on your ideas for 3-4 days. So you might kind of just generate a brand new project with some kind of a prototyping workshop or something for yourselves to come up with the idea that you want to implement. So yeah, that basically sums it up.
Cool, thank you, Owen. Lovely. So the next question from Wes is asking, what, if any, coding knowledge is needed before applying to the course?
So I would say you don't need any before applying. If you're just interested, you can apply and we'll sort of like send you some resources to have a look at. Some people like to explore them before they apply, which is totally fine. So I would have a look on Codecademy. They've got a Learn Ruby course on there, which is great for beginners, and will give you like an overview of the language. And then Code Wars is another good platform that we sort of like use during the application process, different coding challenges. We want you to work on getting 100 honor, which is like their points-based system. So yeah, no coding experience needed before you apply, but as part of the application process, you will have to learn some Ruby and do some different challenges before sort of having an interview with us.
Cool. And the next question is kind of interview based as well. And they're asking, what's the process, interview process like for apprenticeships?
Again, it does vary depending on like the company that are sort of hiring the apprentices. But normally it might look like a phone interview. So you will apply. Once we've received your application, we'll do a phone interview with you to find out sort of why you're interested in the company, why you'd want to do an apprenticeship through Makers. And then if you're sort of shortlisted after that, you'll then interview with the company themselves. And within that, you'll also do some coding challenges for us, which will require the same prep as for the bootcamp. So the Codecademy, Learn Ruby, and having a look at Code Wars as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. So the next question is an interesting one, because I think it's kind of a matter of opinion, but so they're asking, they're torn between Makers and CodeWorks bootcamps. They get the impression that Makers is a bit more well-rounded in terms of multiple languages, principles, etc. Whereas CodeWorks focuses more specifically on JavaScript, which is a bit narrower, but the outcomes are good in terms of salary. Do we have any thoughts? I'll start and then we can go around and see. I think one thing that all of us tend to try to get across is that it's about kind of like which bootcamp works for you and like what your aims are. So if you want to have kind of like more of a open kind of taste of everything, that's great. Or if you want to do something really specific, it should really be driven by like what you think is best for yourself. And one thing that I would say is that in terms of job outcomes that our students have and where they end up going, we have a real range in the first roles that they go into. So some people will go into a role where they do a really specific language, where some people will do more kind of like full stack roles where they do a bit of everything. So I know just from our perspective, you're not limited by that, and it's possible that by the other bootcamp, it might not be as limited as it appears. So that's just my kind of thoughts on it. Anything different from you? Let's go to Rachel first.
Yeah, I would say like none of us have done the CodeWorks course, so I guess we don't know the ins and outs of the course. But yeah, do your research. Coming along to events hopefully gives you a good idea of, or gives you a feel of what it's like at Makers. So yeah, I would perhaps, do research, go with your gut feeling, and check the curriculum, like what are your goals from doing a bootcamp? I know the end is to get a job as a developer, but like, do you have like specific things that you would like to cover? And perhaps like one bootcamp does it slightly more than the other, and that's the one that you might sort of end up going with.
Yeah, I would just say choose Makers. That's my answer. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think Haley and Rachel really answered that super well. For somebody, so I didn't do Makers. That's not how I learned to program. I genuinely think that it would have been a good choice for myself. And I'll say a little bit why, but please feel free to play like Oscar music to get me to stop talking, Haley, if I'm going on for too long. But I came into software development in a really traditional background of like a 4-year university degree. And I found that I was picking up lots of individual modules. And then I started working as a developer and I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? And I felt like I really didn't pick something up to kind of pull all of those things together and have one kind of core process for breaking down a problem and writing code and figuring out what do I actually need to do with this. So I kind of like, I actually met a lot of Makers alumni in my last job as an iOS developer, and I kind of, this is before I really knew a lot about what Makers did, but I found that they had really methodical approaches to bugs. Like if something went wrong in their code, they would come over and tell me a lot about the code, what they expected to happen versus what's actually happening, the kinds of things that they've tried, the kinds of things they want to figure out next. They'd be able to kind of run the code, print things out, and basically just they had so much context and visibility over what was going wrong in their code that I was really impressed by, because my kind of journey into software developing in a team for the first time was only stressful. And I think I relied a lot on senior developers who, of course, don't have a lot of time for mentorship all of the time. So I think Makers, I work here now, obviously, so I've seen a lot more of, okay, this is actually how we do it. The kind of things we focus on are building up resilience, building up a methodical process for breaking a problem down. And this is kind of, identifying knowledge gaps, identifying what is the thing that maybe you need to do a bit more research into to understand this bigger problem. And I think it's also down to the level of debugging, right? So when you get a sea of red error messages in your code, you're thinking, what is this error message telling me about my code? What do I understand this is telling me? How do I research this? How do I see where it fits into my overall program? And I think those kind of two things will hopefully inspire you that, no matter what it is you want to learn, or no matter what problem you want to solve, that you can get there. And I think that is the thing that that motivates me as a coach at Makers. I think that that's the skill that we're building up. And, we have we try to think a lot about how we're feeling when we're programming. Like, if you're stressed, it's going to be really hard to debug that thing. So just kind of being aware of your own thoughts and feelings when you're trying to address a bug, and knowing when you need to reach out for help or take a break or those kinds of things. We heavily focus on that, and it's very much integrated with our EI curriculum that Dana built, who is our Chief Joy Officer. One last thing, I actually did the end of bootcamp retro with the November cohort this morning. So I asked them to kind of just let me know one thing they learned from Makers. And something that came up is that a lot of people found out that they kind of learned the difference between coding and developing. And I thought that was really lovely, because I think that that's kind of what we try to emulate here, as close to a real working software development environment as possible. Okay, I'm done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. That was really helpful. That kind of links into Wes's question as well, which hopefully was covered mainly, just asking the difference between us and other coding bootcamps. Just a few extra things that I would add to that is, again, as Rachel said, kind of do your research, but I know with Makers, all of our coaches have been professional working software developers. They've worked at companies like Deloitte, Facebook. They've had like really, really great industry experience. Whereas I think in some boot camps, the graduating cohort then become the next sort of like group of coaches, which can be fine. It just depends on which way you prefer. Also look at the kind of outcomes that you want. Again, some places, like we have hiring partners, and it's your choice if you want to apply for those jobs, or you can apply externally. I know some places you have to apply just in the partner network, again, which has like advantages and disadvantages. And another element I would say is our alumni community. Makers is like really deeply rooted in the kind of London tech community. We've just had our 8th birthday, so we've got alumni who have, you know, we were the first boot camp in the UK. So some of our alumni who were studying with us 8 years ago have now come back to us to hire developers, and you know, they know what Makers is about, and they know the skill set. So you know, you see a lot of job roles that are kind of just in the sort of Makers sphere, I guess. So yeah, it's kind of, it's a really great community and like names sort of be associated with. Anything else that you guys would add on that one at all? Nope, all good, cool. Hopefully that's helpful for you. So Matt is asking, are we Linux friendly? Owen.
I would say I'm not Linux unfriendly. I just don't use it. So I think, yeah, so basically what I said earlier, just about if you're comfortable with a particular operating system and you have a preference for something that's not Mac OS, then go for it. But it's just, yeah, feeling comfortable with it just means that, like, if you have a part of a challenge that requires you to run something in the command line or something like that, or install a certain framework, knowing that there might be a bit more independent research for you to do to go achieve that thing. And you know, that's not a terrible thing, right? Because that's basically, like, a lot of the courses requires independent research and finding things out and letting things go wrong. So you can just figure that out. So it's kind of down to your own comfort levels, I think.
Cool, thank you. Awesome. So the next one's asking about scholarships. So what are the disadvantaged groups that are eligible for the scholarship? So I wouldn't say it's disadvantaged groups. The scholarships are aimed at kind of tackling underrepresentation. So the 2 groups that we're working with are Coding Black Females, who work to get more Black women into tech, and Code Bar, who work with a real range of underrepresented groups. So if you go onto the Code Bar website, there's a list of the different kind of groups that they work to support, and it's a really broad range. And so if you're interested in any way, please do have a look, because yeah, there's a lot of people who are covered by those opportunities. Okay. Do we require GCSEs to join or complete the course? No, we don't ask for any qualifications at all. It's just based on the prep work and your motivation letter. Okay, when is it likely that the apprenticeships will open again? Rachel, do you have any details about that?
So they did open briefly in January. So we sort of took in an intake of people applying in January, and they're going to sort of like sit in what's called like our pool of applicants. So they'll go through like the Makers sort of admissions process, so that when we do have opportunities becoming available, they'll be put forward for them. So I imagine something like to enter into the pool will happen again next quarter, or like, you know, over the next 6 months, but probably not immediately, just because we have just done sort of a round of opening up the applications, unfortunately.
Is it still the case that people can register interest on the website? Yeah.
Yeah, so you do need to register your interest, because I guess when we do open them, we don't open them fully to everyone. It's just to people that have registered their interest online. So definitely going and putting your email in on the apprenticeship page.
Cool, thank you. And the next one's staying apprenticeships theme. How many people will be chosen to go forward for the apprenticeship? I think it kind of varies from partner to partner, is that right?
Yeah, it does vary. There are a good number of opportunities with Elsevier, but it's very competitive. So yeah, I think just bear that in mind, that we do have lots of people applying. And so, yeah, although there are some opportunities this year with the Elsevier, there will be lots of people being put forward for them, I guess. So yeah, it is a bit of a waiting game with the apprenticeship, unfortunately. It is a great product and it's a great opportunity to get into tech, but that, I guess, comes with its challenges as well.
Cool, thank you, Rachel. So the next question is asking, any recommendations for a Mac laptop for coding at a reasonable price? Owen, I'm going to come to you because I don't know.
I know that there are places, so like buying refurbished Mac laptops and things like that. I think Apple has its own refurbished line that you can buy directly from them. I know there's a couple of places, but I actually don't have any off the top of my head. I'm really sorry, but I think I've seen recommendations before somewhere in our Slack. So if you wanted to get in touch via email or something, maybe we could drop you a line. I hope that's helpful.
Cool,
and Owen, maybe you could add, like, is there a type of like a spec of laptop that this person could look for? Like, do they need like the highest end one, or is there like a basic level?
I think so, yeah. My MacBook is quite old at this point, and it hasn't really had trouble with the kinds of things we work on. I think the only like resource heavy thing I've worked with is Xcode sometimes for iOS development. So if you were to decide to do iOS development for your final project, it might not run super smoothly. But in terms of all of the core like languages and technologies we use, like it doesn't need to be super high end. I think MacBooks are I find them quite reliable. So I think it'll be all right.
Ooh, thanks both. Awesome. So is there an opportunity for students to go to the Makers offices to complete the course if it's easier for them to work from there as opposed to home? Unfortunately, no, not at the moment. None of our staff are going to work from the office either, as you can tell. So yeah, there's we're fully remote at the moment. But like we said, please keep an eye out for when we kind of make an announcement, because we will be going back at some point. We just don't know when at the moment, unfortunately. Cool. So the next question is asking, why Ruby? I think we touched on this a little bit, but is there anything else that you'd add to that, Owen?
Yeah, Ruby's lovely. So I think why Ruby, it's quite a steadily popular programming language. It's definitely still used quite a lot. I think I've had a list before of modern day websites that are still very much using Ruby. But if you kind of look it up to see if you're interested in particular examples of what you can do with Ruby, you'll find it's quite widely circulating still. But I think personally, I really like it because I think it's just quite nice to read. So it lets you focus more on the fundamentals and the concepts you're trying to learn about rather than syntax. There's kind of less you need to worry about and less you need to read, which I think is quite nice, because yeah, it's those kind of concepts that you build up confidence with in the first couple of weeks that really get you kind of going on this journey. So that's where I think it's definitely a strength. And I think when you pick up Rails to do Ruby on Rails, then in I think weeks 8 and 9 of the bootcamp, it's also quite cool because you do get introduced to the web in week 3 with Sinatra, but Rails lets you do a lot. So it's quite cool to see what, basically just what you can achieve with it. So I just love Ruby. Yeah, so.
Cool, thank you. There's a couple of other Ruby related questions actually. Do you have any video-based kind of like learning? Do you have any recommended video-based learning for Ruby? Are there any tutorials or places that people can go that you can recommend at all?
So I guess this is for outside of Makers. So I'm not sure. So personally, like I don't use a lot of video tutorials for learning about things in programming because I find my attention span just dissipates immediately. Like I put my earphones in, press play, and 8 minutes later, I realize I actually haven't absorbed anything. So it's not something I use a lot. There's a website that I really like for referencing Ruby called Ruby Guides. I think it's just rubyguides.com or something like that. I like kind of spot checking that for things I want to double check, like syntax, concepts, things like that. There's a couple of different videos we use in our bootcamp. So for example, when you're learning about test-driven development in week 1 of the Academy Bootcamp, after I run my test-driven development workshop, I share a video tutorial that another coach recorded, so you can kind of reference that, follow along, see maybe if their approach differs from yours, things like that. So I kind of like, I only use videos in a kind of a spot check kind of a way, rather than a whole thing to be led by, if that makes sense. So I don't have any specific examples that I can share with you. I'm sorry.
One thing I'd actually suggest, if you're looking for some resources, we have a learn coding Slack community, and basically what that is a place where, if you're just learning to code, like whether you want to kind of like come to Makers or you're just kind of generally finding out more about coding, you can join this community, and we share a lot of like resources of like, you know, what different people find useful, whether it's like books or events or all that kind of thing. It's just a place for people to kind of like talk about coding and like share their experience. So I'll find the invite link for that in just a second, and I will drop that into the chat section. So then if you want to kind of join that, then it's also got some of our alumni in there too, so they might be able to recommend some more things that like we don't know about at the moment. So yeah, I'd recommend that to anyone who's learning. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities in there. Awesome. So another Ruby question. Is Ruby used more in certain sectors than others? They work in digital marketing and would like to use the skills to further their current career within the sector. I mean, is that something that you know about at all? Or?
I don't. I'm so sorry. I don't know about that.
In all honesty, I'm personally not too sure because I don't work on that side of things. But again, maybe one for if you drop us an email or join Learn Coding, we might be able to find you a bit a kind of more conclusive answer on that one. Cool. So what is the front end back end split of the 12-week course?
Yeah, so it's heavily backend at the start to get the fundamentals down, I would say. You start working with the web in week 3, and then you spend a bit more time with databases in week 4. Team 5 is a team project where you build a full stack project in a team. And then you move on to 2 weeks of front-end JavaScript, where you build a single page application. And then there's another full stack project for 2 weeks with Ruby on Rails. And then your final project is basically whatever you want it to be. So I just think the bootcamp is full stack, full stop. I've never really, actually that is a great slogan. I've never really thought about the split too much, because I think in the team projects, for example, there is a lot of kind of navigating with your team what you want to focus on. So I often encourage learners in particularly week 5, which is kind of a little bit of consolidation after the first 4 weeks of the full-time course, to think about what they're feeling most and least confident a bit in from the first 4 weeks, and then try to target those things that you're feeling less confident with. But some people really like working more in the front end, more people prefer working in the back end. I think it's fine to have those preferences, but if they're coming from a place of being afraid of one, I'd say target that thing then. So even if you feel like you won't enjoy it as much, I think it's good to kind of target the things you feel less sure of. So yeah, you can kind of navigate a bit in your team projects what you'd like to maybe do a little bit more on, but I would expect you to work on the full stack throughout the bootcamp.
Awesome, thank you. Lovely. So Cynthia's asking, can we access the recording for the session anywhere? Yes, we upload all of the recordings to YouTube. So this will be going up on Monday. There's also a bunch of other like previous events, other demo days, but also a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, have a look there, because in a lot of them we've got some Q&As with previous alumni as well. So if you want to get more of the perspective of like, you know, their experience of the course, obviously it's great to hear from us, but hearing from our alumni gives you a whole other dimension. So yeah, please take a look at those YouTube videos. There's some really good stuff on there. Cool. So next question is asking, with the current apprenticeship partner, how long is the interview process, and when would the successful candidates start?
So with Elsevier, there's a cohort starting in May. and applications I've just checked do close on the 28th of February. So you've got a couple of days if you're interested in applying for that one. So yeah, I don't know specifically when the interviews are going to be held. But yeah, the applications close in a couple of days. Once you apply, you'll then get an idea of timeline from our apprenticeships team. So yeah, one is going to start in May and the other cohort is going to start later in the year in September. So yeah, that's a slightly longer wait for the second opportunity.
Cool, thank you, Rachel. Lovely. So Petra's asking, how many coaches are there? I've just been trying to do a quick count in my head and my mind's been completely blank.
I've just had a look. We have head of training, who is Kay, and then we have 9 technical coaches, including Alice, who is our head of coaches at the moment. We have Dana, who teaches the emotional intelligence curriculum and sort of like well-being when you're on the course. We then have 2 careers coaches and 1 careers and well-being coach for sort of when you finish the course. They sort of help on the job hunting side. So yeah.
I'm so happy that you did the research there. That was like boom, boom, boom. Amazing. Yeah, there you go. Hopefully that was a nice conclusive answer for you. Awesome. So Jess is asking, is Owen teaching on the part-time course starting in April?
I hope that's like in a good way, not a bad way. Yeah, I'm not actually currently scheduled to work on the part-time course, but who knows? We'll see.
Fingers crossed. Awesome. So next question is there a choice of group projects? And if so, what sorts of projects could groups choose to do? I don't know if this is in context of just the final project or general projects. I think Owen touched on earlier, there are kind of set projects for like the 2, you know what, I'm going to let you explain it, because there's like kind of 3 final projects in the end of the course with like varying flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the first 2, they're kind of set projects in that you're given specifications to work from. The first one, yeah, you're building it from a list of requirements basically that the client wants, and then it's up to your team to break those down and decide what that like looks like in the context of how do we build this thing, how do we split up the work, and then kind of like a fair bit of freedom in terms of choosing what are your nice to haves, you know, what are the must haves, what will you definitely need to implement versus what's a nice thing that we can think about further down the line. So people put their own spin on them anyway. The same for the second project, which is a 2-week engineering project. You're given the task by makers, and kind of, you know, everybody's ends up looking quite differently basically by the end of it in terms of visuals, but also functionality. I think it can differ quite a bit. And then your final project, you can basically do whatever you want. So yeah, people come up with like, basically people are just interested in a lot of wide-ranging ones, as you probably saw this evening. So I've been at Makers for 1.5 years, and I just think it's really wide-ranging. People often want to learn a specific new tech stack like React, so they might kind of have that in mind when they're deciding what they want their idea to be, in which it can still be super broad. Some people want to do iOS development and they download Xcode and learn that in 2 weeks. With their project, could be machine learning, AI, stuff like that. There was one project, they use a Raspberry Pi, so I had to learn what a Raspberry Pi actually was, which was really interesting. And yeah, they're quite wide ranging. I think there's a record of like all of our final projects somewhere on YouTube or Facebook if you want to check some more of them out. But yeah, they're super wide ranging.
Cool, thank you, Owen. Let's see where we are, sorry. Okay, great. So is there a Q&A with Dana? They'd really like to hear more about her role and involvement. Yes, so I've just done a Rachel and done some background research in the meantime. I'm going to post a link to one of her YouTube videos in the chat. If you go onto our blog as well and just search Dana or like wellbeing or EI, there's a bunch of content around what she does. Yeah, I'd really, really recommend like looking more into the role she plays here, because yeah, she's fantastic. And like I said, I know the students like really, really value having kind of that aspect to the course as well. Great, so do we provide Macs? Yes, we do. And if not, what do I need to use on Windows? So yeah, I guess, I mean, as we said, we can lend you a Mac. And Rachel, was there something, sorry, that you
I was just going to say, we only lend Macs for the full-time part of the course. So for the pre-course, which is the first 4 weeks, you will need, it could be Windows or it could be a Mac, whatever you have, a computer or a laptop. We do send you like a guide to set up, I think it's called Cloud9 on your laptops. I don't think it's the simplest to like download, but that's where I guess your like problem solving comes into effect, and hopefully like the maker's mindset that we're looking for to help sort of like set up your laptop. So, and then within the pre-course, if you decide that actually you're struggling, you can then request to borrow a laptop. I do think that some of the coaches have a stronger belief that like it is much easier to use a Mac on the full-time part of the course, especially if you haven't had experience using like a Linux distributor, because especially now we're remote, again, I guess it's harder for us to offer like assistance. So yeah, I guess you have time to think about it in the pre-course, and then you can request one if you are struggling.
Cool, thanks, Rachel. So next question, how many coaches are involved in the full-time course and part-time course? So I'm guessing this means kind of like, what, actually it'd be good to know generally like how the coaching works. Like, is it one coach throughout, or do you share it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, thanks for this question. So the way we kind of split it is that one coach will be leading one cohort for typically a 2-week period. So there will be multiple coaches leading individual apprenticeship cohorts and academy cohorts, which is the paid bootcamp, and a lead coach for the part-time course as well. So with the academy, there's typically 4 coaches working specifically for the full-time course in any given week. So you'll have a lead coach. They'll be the person that kind of checks in with your cohort, runs your workshops, and runs your retro, and you'll kind of see the most of them that week. But then we have a central coaching channel where you'll go to if you have you know, blockers, if you're stuck on something, if you want to get some support with something, or you know, just have a chat about anything. And in there's then typically the other coaches that are working in bootcamp that week. So it'll be one kind of lead coach for your cohort, and then maybe 3-4 more coaches in any given morning in the coaching channel. But all of our coaches really can coach any of it, whether it's across apprenticeships or the paid bootcamp. So sometimes it's kind of more free flowing than that, and we'll kind of move between sections or swap a week and stuff like that. Or if people are taking leave, for example, then more coaches will come over to work on a particular side. And I think for part-time, I believe there'll be one dedicated coach for that.
Cool, awesome, thank you. So I'm going to take these last 3 to kind of like round out the session today, and then if you do have any other questions, just please, like we said, get back to us, email us, join Learn Coding. Oh God, it'd be great to see you there. And yeah, so let's just finish off these last 3 questions. Cool, so how much reading is expected in terms of books rather than blogs? Can someone with a visual impairment get the most out of the course and be supported to do so? Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of the course materials are specifically books, and I know that we've had students come to us with a range of different needs, and we'll always kind of speak to you about, you know, what's best for you before joining the course. So it's always a conversation. Is there anything else that you can add to that, Owen, that might be more helpful for like this specific question?
I think in terms of quantity, I wouldn't worry. I have not read a programming book ever. I've checked them out of the library and then let them gather dust. I think I keep saying that tonight. I don't read books. I'm exposing myself. But yeah, I kind of prefer much snappier things like blog posts, articles, things like that, that I can just kind of pick out and reference as I need them. So in terms of quantity, I wouldn't worry. In terms of somebody with a visual impairment, could they get the most out of it? I think to be able to answer this, definitely get in touch with us, and we can just have a think about how we can best support you. And yeah.
Yeah, I would say our head of training, Kay, is always like really helpful to with people. Her email is just kay@makers.tech. So please, if you're thinking of applying, just get in touch with her, and she'll be able to kind of talk you through it before you apply and all that kind of thing. Lovely. So the last question is, can you fail the course? Yeah, obviously we do have students who drop out for a range of different reasons. There's no tests though that you kind of like have to kind of pass week by week. I think our main focus is ensuring that you're kind of progressing through the course at the pace that we expect. But there are systems in place for, you know, if you can see that someone's like not logging in or not showing up, it's not just the case that it would be, you know, you've not logged in for a few days and then we then, you know, kick you off the course or something. The coach would always come to you and, you know, make sure everything's okay, you know, that you have the support you need and that kind of thing. And as we've mentioned several times, we've got Dana on the coaching team as well, who, if there's anything kind of personally that's going on with you, she would really kind of be your port of call for helping you through all of those kind of things. Anything additional there that I've missed that might be helpful for this question?
Yeah, I think you answered it really well. I think failing the course, I don't know, I'm thinking of examples like it's an intensive boot camp. Like it's an experience. It can be a bit overwhelming, especially at the start when you join the full-time course, because it can feel like there's a lot happening at once. And yes, sometimes that's a lot for some people because it, you know, it just can be. So I think the main thing then is just communicating with us and you know, getting in touch with the coach to have a bit of a chat, and we can just see like, what is it that's going on? What are you struggling with? Whether it's, you know, knowing what to work on in self-led learning mornings, it could be a particular concept, it could be imposter syndrome. You might feel, actually, I don't think this is for me. There could be such a wide range of things that you're struggling with. So I think, yeah, it's always like, we'll just do our very best to see how we can support you and take it from there. So I would like to say, like, you know, no, where possible. Unless, of course, there's something extenuating that just means that you really can't continue. But yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Owen and Rachel, for kind of all of your answers and everything. That's the end of today's event. So thank you so much for kind of sticking with us and asking all of your questions. I think we had like a really, really nice range of things there. So hopefully that's helpful for you if you're thinking of applying. As I said, my email's just in the chat if you've got any questions at all that you've not asked today specifically. Yeah, look out for our events. We've got lots of things coming up, and I think that's about everything. So yeah, we'll see you. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Okay, bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.